Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just broke down some of the biggest questions for the top 25 teams as we head into the year, but let's get into some fall camp intel. There were a number of starting quarterbacks that were named. UGA is struggling with a couple of injuries, so let's go ahead and jump into this thing. And I want to start with a couple of teams that you might not be thinking about too much as we head into this year, but a couple of big time things happened at those universities. Arizona State has named their starting quarterback. It is going to be Sam Leavitt starting that game against Wyoming in week 1. This is something that frankly is a little bit of a surprise to me. He was a redshirt freshman, a very talented guy at Michigan State from a year ago and transferred over, but overall, Jeff Sims was the more veteran choice in this battle, and it's one of those things that this is likely kind of the nail in the coffin of Jeff Sims' career in a lot of different ways. He's bounced around a little bit. He's had a number of different chances to be a starting quarterback. It has not worked out. But all that being said, Arizona State is one of those offenses that is going to have to get a little bit gimmicky at times, and this is a very talented runner of the football, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the game plan one way or the other this upcoming year, and it could be a kind of a fun way for Arizona State to get teams on their heels. But moving on to Michigan State, excuse me, we had the captains announced for the Spartans this last little bit, and it starts with Nate Carter. He is the leader of this team, the best player on this team at running back, an absolute beast. So definitely someone to watch this year. Tanner Miller and Maverick Hansen are the anchors of the O-line and the D-line respectively. Jordan Turner is likely the top defensive player on the team. And then there's Aiden Childs, the guy that came over with Jonathan Smith over from Oregon State and is now the starting quarterback there. He is also going to be a captain, and he is 18 years old, which is absolutely wild that someone that not only transferred in from a different school but is that young was able to command that respect, because this is a award that is voted on by the players. So they felt that he was the leader. They felt like he was someone that should have that C on his chest, and that is quite a big honor for someone that is that young, that is still kind of developing, and he's going to be a special player. I can promise you that. It might not be in 2024, but I promise you at some point in his college career, Aiden Childs is going to make a lot of people watch him very, very quickly. Moving on to Baylor, they have named their starter. Toledo transfer Daquan Finn is going to be the starting quarterback. He was the MAC MVP at Toledo a year ago, has accounted for over 7,000 passing yards, 1,800 rushing yards, 88 touchdowns during his career. The dude's ridiculous, and this is a huge reason why Dave Aranda is kind of speaking a little bit quietly confident about this team, because this kid is special. He's someone that can absolutely be an offense by himself, and he's probably going to have to be that at certain points this year for Baylor to be the team that they want to be. So he's a very, very talented kid, one of my favorite outright quarterbacks in the country, and I definitely think he's going to be one of those guys that at some point in the season, he's going to cause a problem for one of those top Big 12 teams, and a lot of people are going to be asking some very interesting questions about what that conference looks like going forward. Moving on to Indiana, they lost a huge player in Nick Kidwell. He was projected to be the starter at right guard. He's going to miss the entire season with a knee injury, and he started 34 games for James Madison before transferring over with Kurt Cignetti, obviously, and this was going to be the guy. This was going to be the guy that held down everything in that offensive line and did all the things that they needed him to do. So this is a huge, huge hit to a unit that very much did not need this. So they're going to have to figure that out pretty quickly. Indiana in general cannot do a lot of injuries this year if they want to, reach the heights that, frankly, I think they're capable of reaching. They're a very dangerous team and definitely one that could make some noise, but this is a loss that could definitely affect them in a number of different ways. Moving on to South Carolina, Lenora Sellers is your starter for Gamecock fans, and that really didn't need to be said, kind of the same way Miller Moss didn't need to be said, but he was battling with Robbie Ashford, the Auburn transfer, for a little bit there. This guy might just be the number one athlete across the entire country, outside of maybe his teammate Nick Harbor, because this guy is a total game changer. He's one of those guys that it doesn't matter how many incredible defensive players you have on the other side. It doesn't matter how many 5-stars you have or how many guys that can run a 4-2. He can run a 4-1. Well, he can't run a 4-1, but he can do it better than a lot of other guys in this country, and he's definitely one of those guys that is going to make a player that hypothetically should be a lot better than him look really, really stupid this upcoming year. I think this is a guy that is going to lead South Carolina to some type of upset this year. I don't know where it's going to come, but there's going to be a game where you look up and South Carolina is winning a game they shouldn't be winning, and it's because Lenore Sellers has about 200 yards on the ground and is doing ridiculous stuff. So definitely a player that I love and I think is going to just light the world on fire this upcoming year. Georgia is nursing a couple of injuries right now, and it leads the way with Roderick Robinson, a very talented running back that made a ton of noise this offseason and definitely is and was going to be a huge part of that offense. He's dealing with a little bit of turf toe, seems to be close to being back, but you never really know. Turf toe is one of those things that could get worse one day, could get better one day, and it's all kind of a variable. So we'll see what happens with that. Definitely someone they want on the field against Clemson. The other player that you have to worry about is Colby Young. He is out right now. He was out of both scrimmages for Georgia in fall camp, and this is a very talented player, and frankly, he was likely the one that was going to fill the void of Ra Thomas being kicked off the team. So definitely someone you want on the field. It seems like he probably will be, but it's hard to really get a gauge on this, partly because Kirby Smart is so tight to the vest with a lot of these injuries. And then Xavier McLeod, and this is the one that Kirby Smart gave us very, very little about. He is hurt. He's nursing some type of injury. Not exactly sure what's going on. Not exactly sure what the timeline is, so it's hard to get a gauge on this one. I do know that they need as many defensive tackles as they can get going into that Clemson game because Clemson's going to run the ball. Phil Maffa is going to be a very hard guy to stop, and having guys to rotate in is going to be hugely important. So this could be a huge one for that Week 1 matchup against Clemson, but at the end of the day, it seems like all those guys are likely back here pretty soon, but you never really know what's going to happen with those. Moving over to Kansas State, Camden Beebe, you might remember Connor or Cooper? Connor Beebe, I think. I can't remember right now, but Camden Beebe is the brother of that player, and he is someone that had been on the team the last couple of years, has had some medical stuff, and he is going to medically retire from college football, but he is going to remain with the coaching staff. So a very, very cool thing for him to still be around that team. Obviously devastating for him to have to leave football behind, and the harsh reality of this sport in a lot of different ways. So hoping the best for him, hoping he can, obviously be a great coach for a lot of these O-linemen, and it's going to be a really, really interesting thing to watch throughout this year, and a very, very cool story overall. DJ Giddens is someone definitely that we need to watch. He is still wearing a red limited contact jersey, and definitely something that they're going to have to watch going into that Week 1 matchup because they want this guy on the field immediately. He is one of the most valuable maybe the most valuable player on this offense outside of Avery Johnson, because the kid can do so many different things. He's going to be the trend center. He's going to be the guy that absolutely puts this team on its back at different points of the game. So he is someone you very much need to be healthy, and right now it seems like he's just not all the way there. I'm sure he'll be fine come game time, but definitely something to watch over the next little bit. Also, we have a little bit of a backup quarterback battle happening over at Kansas State, and this could be a huge thing because you have a quarterback that likes to run the ball that obviously opens him up to a couple more injuries here and there. But it sounds like Jacob Newth is someone definitely to watch here. He was there a year ago and is the only guy really back in that quarterback room other than Avery Johnson, obviously. And then you have Taquan Roberson, who came in from UConn, a very talented player, someone that I think is going to make a number of different plays this year, and it sounds like he might just have the inside track to get this job. A very athletic guy, kind of like that Avery Johnson type build, and I think he's going to be very talented. So I would lean towards Roberson in this one, but who knows? Definitely one that will be fun to watch, and if it doesn't come into play at all, that's probably the best case scenario for Kansas State fans, that's for sure. But moving on to Nebraska, we see all of these different colored jerseys on these quarterbacks, but soon enough, it will not be that case. I can promise you that. But Dylan Raiola hasn't been named the starter officially, but he's the starter. There's no two questions about that. He's absolutely going to be the guy, and he's been doing really well throughout camp and been doing the number one thing that he needed to, which is taking care of the ball. That was always the thing that with freshman quarterbacks you're always a little bit nervous about. It sounds like he's doing more than enough in that realm, so definitely a huge thing. It sounds like this offense is still struggling with penalties and things of that nature, but overall, when you have your quarterback taking care of the ball, you have a huge box checked, especially for someone that is that young. And then moving on to the D-line, led by Nash Hutmacher, a very, very talented player, but it sounds like this group is just the most talented, deep, consistent group they have in the they've had for a very long time over at Nebraska. I think it's going to be one of the big time strengths of this team and could put them in a really good position to hold serve with a Michigan O-line or an Ohio State O-line, and definitely give them a chance to, at the very least, be in some of these games that look a little bit outmatched as of right now. Moving on to Utah, a lot of news coming out of here. The biggest news is Cam Rising is still healthy, so no worries about that. In fact, there doesn't seem to be too many injuries overall throughout this camp for Utah, which is absolutely huge and very, very rare, as we've seen throughout the country this past little bit. But it sounds like Cam Rising is doing exactly where you want what you want him to do, and in exactly what we've gotten accustomed to him doing throughout the last couple of years. And then Dorian Singer is a guy they brought over from USC at wide receiver. He's exactly who they want him to be. And frankly, he could have been special at USC. It just didn't necessarily fit him the way that he wanted it to. So he's a very talented guy, definitely someone that I think is going to be a huge player for them. And he might just be a dark horse Biletnikoff contender, but definitely something we'll get into throughout the season. But obviously, there is a ton of stuff going on all around fall camp, all around pretty much everywhere around the country. We're all going to take a short break from that tomorrow. We'll probably get back to it on Friday because there's still some stuff rolling in, but that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the social pages for all the content and updates you could possibly need. We have really incredible people doing awesome work across every single sport you could want. So anything in the world of sports you need, come on over to GSMC and we have you totally covered. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.